The appearance of this car on the streets of Moscow in the early 1960s sparked considerable interest and excitement among passersby. People turned to look and couldn't believe their eyes. They had never seen anything like it before. The car impressed with its airy lightness, elegant lines, and smooth ride. What kind of car is this? It's just a regular passenger car, but why is it so long? Now, it's a government limousine. Wait, but look at its height. It looks more like some kind of minibus, or even a bus. Completely confused in their attempts to classify this unusual vehicle, most passersby still assumed it was a luxury foreign car belonging to some international delegation, whose appearances in Moscow had become common after relations with the West warmed up. But no, the majority's assumption was wrong. This was a Soviet car, a high-capacity passenger vehicle, the ZIL 118 Yunost. But why did the ZIL factory, which was mainly known for producing trucks and luxury limousines, build this lavish minibus? How was this car received at the auto show in Nice, France? And what prevented the Yunost from succeeding on the market and maybe even turning ZIL into a Ford? All these interesting facts and the story of this original creation of the Soviet auto industry are coming up in our next segment. So keep watching and share your impressions of what you see in the comments. Well, the story of this legendary minibus begins during the Khrushchev thaw, which replaced the grim era of Stalin's rule. It seemed that the communist authorities had decided, at least a little, to turn toward the people. Mass construction of panel apartment buildings began, people who had been unlawfully sentenced to labor camps were released, and the additional pressure on peasants was reduced. All these improvements came crashing down on the people of the USSR like an avalanche, sparking a real wave of optimism. Now, the whole country wasn't looking toward the English Channel or Lisbon, but instead, with heads held high, was gazing intently from the depths of space, which was being conquered by Soviet rockets. This entire explosion of technological progress seemed to be bringing the bright future even closer, a future that was already visible somewhere on the horizon. Progress touched not only rocket engineering, but also many other industries in the USSR, including the automotive sector. Many new models of both trucks and passenger cars were already being prepared for mass production. This entire atmosphere of general uplift, fueled by achievements in space, inspired the designers at the Ligachow plant to make their own contribution to the rapid advance of technological progress, which was supposed to accelerate the arrival of a bright future, a future that, according to Nikita Khrushchev's speech at the 22nd Party Congress, was expected to come as soon as 1980. These enthusiasts were the employees of the ZIL department, which was responsible for designing and building executive limousines. By the late 1950s, things were not going well for this division. The production of luxury-class cars was constantly being reduced, and the output of the new Khrushchev-era limousines, which were intended exclusively for the highest ranks of the party elite, was barely a dozen and a half per year. In contrast, the production of the older Stalin-era ZIS 110s, thanks to modifications for use as taxis and ambulances, could reach up to 300 units. At that time, all the factory's attention was focused on launching the production of the new ZIL 130 and ZIL 131 trucks. This situation did not bode well for the team of skilled engineers, who had considerable experience in building luxury-class cars. A solution had to be found, and one was found. An initiative group of young engineers, led by Mykola Rinchar, came up with an interesting idea to build a new, more urban passenger car with a wagon-style body based on the chassis elements and components of the ZIL 111. Along with greater passenger capacity, this car was also supposed to have a comfortable interior. This combination made the car more versatile than regular limousines. It was planned that it could even serve ordinary people, for example, as a route taxi or an ambulance. A similar concept of everything for the people in the early 1960s fully matched the general policy pursued by the Communist Party. The idea was formed, but permission to implement it was never received from the plant's top management. The refusal was summed up in one short standard phrase: not the right time. In the limousine division, everyone understood everything without further explanation, and hoping to get official permission was a lost cause. So they decided to act semi-legally on their own initiative, or, as was customary to say in such cases, on a voluntary basis. For this, they used any spare minute they had outside their main work, worked after hours, gathered on weekends, and drew, sawed, assembled, and welded, only to take it apart and weld it again. That's how they searched for the optimal design. The ones most involved in this work were the young engineers who worked under the guidance of designer-constructor Eric Sabo. It's also important to note that all of this was happening at their own risk, on the grounds of a restricted area of the factory, and at any moment, the engineers working without official permission could have been fired, and that could have been the least severe punishment for them. But all these risks proved to be worth it. And already in January 1962, the first ZIL 118 minibus hit the streets of Moscow, which, in keeping with the era and the age of its designers, was named Yunost, Youth. The first test drives of the Yunost through the streets of the Soviet capital could be compared to the effect of a UFO sighting. As soon as the minibus stopped, a crowd of curious onlookers would immediately gather around it, unable to believe that this vehicle was earthly and even made in the USSR. Many people, to make sure that this car wasn't some kind of mirage or vision, would touch its sides and peer through the windows into the cabin. And this minibus definitely had things to amaze people with. An elegant, airy, lightweight design with a cab-over layout. An oval, slightly recessed radiator grille with round twin headlights on either side. The wheel hubcaps, bumpers, radiator grille, door handles, and side mirrors were all chrome as well. A special highlight of the vehicle was the contrasting wide body moldings that wrapped around the body and hung over the rear twin round taillights. The Yunost had a unibody wagon-style design, which, compared to 7-seat limousines, allowed the passenger capacity to be increased to 17 people. In the comfortable cabin, passengers enjoyed individual comfortable seats, personal lighting, a radio with 4 speakers, ashtrays, coat hooks, an efficient heating and ventilation system, and even a large sliding sunroof in the roof. As for the driver, they had a comfortable seat that could be adjusted both longitudinally and vertically, and the additional minibus cabin was equipped with an electronic clock and a microphone. Passengers boarded and exited through wide swing doors on the right side of the body. In addition, the minibus was equipped with extra rear doors, which were mainly used for loading luggage. This access layout proved to be convenient when the Yunost was converted into an ambulance. The engine compartment in the minibus was located to the right of the driver. Under the hood was a V8 gasoline engine with a displacement of 6 liters and a power output of 150 horsepower. This power unit was borrowed from the ZIL 130 truck. The engine was paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission inherited from the limousine. The car's smooth ride was provided by an independent front wishbone spring suspension, complemented by an anti-roll bar, as well as a dependent rear suspension with long, soft leaf springs. It's also worth noting that the engine, transmission, front suspension, and power steering mechanism were all mounted on a separate subframe, which was attached to the main body using rubber mounts. With the same wheelbase as the ZIL 111 limousine, the minibus was 70 centimeters longer, 6 meters and 84 centimeters. The width was 2 meters and 11 centimeters, and the height was 2 meters and 3 centimeters. The curb weight of the vehicle was 3,320 kilograms. The maximum speed was 120 kilometers per hour. The Yunost used about 30 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers. The unprecedented excitement this vehicle caused during test drives convinced the ZIL management of the project's potential. An official request was even sent to the Moscow Automobile Ministry for additional funding for the plant, necessary to launch a new line of executive vehicles, which, alongside the promising new ZIL 117 and ZIL 114 limousines, also included the ZIL 118 Yunost minibus. The explanatory note attached to the document specifically highlighted the exceptional versatility of this model, which could be produced in a wide range of modifications. According to the plans, Moscow's demand alone for such vehicles was estimated at 300 units per year. These buses were intended to serve various party congresses, conferences, and conventions. Some of them were also to be used as taxis at airports, as ambulances, and as chassis for mounting special equipment for film and radio, as well as for various mobile laboratories. As for the periphery, the most practical use was to deploy these executive minibuses to serve the sanatoriums at southern resorts. Therefore, the memo stated that to ensure production profitability, at least 1,000 of these vehicles needed to be produced annually. The contents of the document sent to Moscow nearly drove the local officials of the automotive ministry to hysteria. What, are they overworked at ZIL or something? Or maybe they want to completely bankrupt our Soviet automotive industry, supplying public transport routes with executive minibuses built from expensive limousine parts, installing some kind of laboratories and film equipment in them, building ambulances? That's just absurd. They are simply misinterpreting the concept of a budget and an executive vehicle, which are mutually exclusive. For such needs, we have, for example, excellent RAF vans and minibuses, or even the UAZ Buhanka. They're simple and versatile, and most importantly, affordable. After such heated debates in the ministry, the document remained unsigned. The ZIL limousine division was still hopeful, but month after month passed and no response ever came. Not even the enthusiastic praise for the Yunost from Prime Minister Nikita Khrushchev helped, who, during the car's demonstration to the top party leadership, even exclaimed with his characteristic frankness, "Now that's a people's car." But unfortunately, it never became a people's car and remained an expensive, prestigious minibus produced only in single units. In 1964, ZIL built a special ambulance modification based on the Yunost, the ZIL 118A, which was equipped with a retractable roof that allowed doctors to work inside the vehicle at full height. This vehicle, equipped with the most advanced medical equipment, was transferred to the balance sheet of the 4th Directorate of the Ministry of Health, which was responsible for providing medical services to members of the Central Committee of the Communist Party and high-ranking officials of the Council of Ministers of the USSR. In total, from 1962 to 1967, the specialized ZIL department for the construction of executive vehicles built only 7 minibuses, which, after testing and refinement, ended up in the garages serving the top party elite. One of them even operated as a route taxi in Moscow. In 1967, a true triumph awaited the Yunost. At an auto show in the French city of Nice, the minibus from the USSR managed to win awards in 12 categories, including for Best Body Design. However, neither the awards nor the publicity in the Western press helped the vehicle find its way to mass production. Although the factory still hadn't lost hope, since larger scale production of minibuses could also lower the cost of manufacturing limousines, making the production of executive cars cheaper, just like mass production of trucks. By 1970, the factory had built another 13 Yunost minibuses. This vehicle was especially liked by the owner of the Ford Company, Henry Ford II, the son of the company's founder, Henry Ford Sr., who visited the USSR on a business trip in 1970. While staying in Moscow, he even refused a limousine and chose to travel specifically in the Yunost minibus. Rumor has it that he even asked the Soviet leadership to sell him a license to produce this vehicle, or at least to set up joint production. In the USSR, the famous American automaker's request was met with a refusal, saying that the pride of the Soviet auto industry was not for sale. Is this really true? Or is it just an exaggeration or a myth created from a misinterpretation of Ford's polite words? But did the famous car company really need a vehicle that the Soviet Union hadn't been able to put into production for over 8 years? And whose design, according to many, was borrowed from the American minivans Chevrolet Corvair Greenbrier sports wagon produced from 1961 to 1965? We'll leave the answer to that question up to you, our dear viewers. Share your thoughts in the comments and we'll keep going. By 1971, the Yunost had already undergone a significant restyling. The second generation of the executive minibus received a new designation, ZIL 118K, and a new design styled after the prestigious ZIL 114 limousine. Production of this version, which was later renamed ZIL 119, continued all the way until 1994. In total, 86 more minibuses were produced during this time, which were used to serve government delegations. Several ambulances were also built based on this model. A few minibuses converted into special communications vehicles were handed over to the KGB. The Soviet police also received their own Yunost, which was converted into a mobile forensic laboratory. As of today, most of these minibuses have been lost. Those that have survived are kept in museums or in the hands of private collectors who, sparing no resources or time, are trying once again to bring the Yunost back to life.